Hi, good evening, and thank you for joining us on day 273 at GGY. Subalu Taurudak to everyone. Today we are here for a very special discussion on the plight of children in this country, and we are planning to confront some really sort of pressing issues affecting children in Sri Lanka, from corporal punishment to child abuse and malnutrition. Recent incidents sort of underscore the urgency of protecting our children, as there are clear gaps in our law and law enforcement framework, as well as the lack of understanding of various international conventions Sri Lanka has signed on to. So let's dive straight in. I don't think we need too much of a preamble, because we have very special guests to discuss all of this with us. We have Tush Wickramanayake. Thank you so much, Tush, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's our pleasure. So Tush is the founder chairperson of Stop Child Cruelty Trust. She's also a physician of 30 plus years and a mother. How many children do you have?
Two.
Tush? Two kids, okay. Tush also spearheaded the formation and she's also the co-convener of Sri Lanka's first Child Protection Alliance, coalition of credible organizations on child protection, recognized as one of 5 global end violence champions at Children and Youth 2021. CY21, the largest platform of world leaders and activists on child rights, convened by UNICEF. And also, I think, the only Sri Lankan organization to be represented there.
Only Sri Lankan to be
Sri Lankan to be recognized there. Tush has defended Sri Lankan children at UN UPR Sri Lanka sessions in Geneva in 2022-23, the only child rights organization to represent 5.2 million children in Sri Lanka.
Yes.
That
is correct, because we were the only ones there.
Right. So Tush, thank you so much. As I said, so let me quickly introduce the rest of us. We have Leisha and we have Damaris joining us today as well. And we also have Chris and we have Angie. Thank you so much. And we have a bunch of others at the back who wants to just kind of fade into the background. No, they don't want to be in front of the camera. So Tush, to start with, can you share some sort of insights into the journey of founding Stop Child Cruelty Trust and the motivation behind this establishment? What brought you into this space?
Sure. So as you know, many times activists come to the fore because of some kind of injustice that they have experienced personally. So my story is no different. My daughter, who was 11, was subjected to corporal punishment in school. And then subsequently to mental abuse, which was in 2018 here in Sri Lanka in an international school. And when I tried to defend my child, when I tried to do something about it, I realized that the whole child protection system was crippled. It wasn't just the education system, it was the health, it was the judiciary, it was the police, law and order, everywhere. And then I formed Stop Child Cruelty Trust so that I would be able to support other children, and it has become this massive movement now. Right.
Okay. So basically, a personal experience brought you into this space, and now you've kind of branched out, brought. Yeah, I mean, very similar to how we got into this. I mean, not a personal experience, but the Aragale brought us into this. Now, once your eyes are open, it's very difficult to kind of shut your eyes to it.
Always. It is now what I breathe and eat.
Okay, well, we're glad that we have a champion for children's rights. So, to start with, Tush, I mean, we're a group of citizen activists. So, and the people who follow us and who listen to us perhaps has surface understanding of some of these issues, right? So, in terms of responsibility for the children, like who is the ultimate guardian of children in this country, and what is the responsibility of the state towards children?
Yeah. So we have this notion that lamai aiti apita, that they belong to us, okay? But no, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights itself says that every human being is born free and equal, okay? So a child does not belong to anyone, but the primary guardianship of that child are the parents or the legal guardians, whoever they might be, and the ultimate guardians is the state. And when we say the state, that includes the government that the people appoint from time to time, the government agencies that are responsible for child protection, a big role with the judiciary, and then there's the citizenry. So we all have an equal responsibility, which is why child protection is a collective social responsibility. And more than other causes, we can't just simply walk away. We just cannot look away because Sri Lanka has a huge population of children. For such a tiny country, we have 25% of our population are children, which is the 5.2 million. And we know that women are 50%. And these are kind of the similar statistics wherever there has been a long war. Countries that have had conflict, these are similar statistics. But for a small country to have such a huge number of children, that means that whenever there's a political slogan similar to Aragale, Daruanta Sudusu Rata, a country fit for our children. But we never talk about children fit for the country, children who are unscarred and unscathed fit for our country. And that's my slogan.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's easy. I mean, I think for most of us, our primary motivation is to leave a better country for our kids.
Yeah.
But you're right, like, what kind of kids are we leaving this country for? I think that also needs to be a question. So, broadly, we are signed on to various international conventions and things like that. There has to be a definition for a child, right?
Yes.
So is it different in different places?
No. So the universal definition of a child is someone who is less than 18 years of age. However, in Sri Lanka, in different rule books, different laws, they are categorized differently. So some law book says it's 12. Very recently, the Children and Young Persons Ordinance, which is a very old set of rules, which is like the Bible that the law enforcement, the judiciary uses whenever a child comes into contact with the law, be it as a victim or a perpetrator. That's the Children and Young Persons Ordinance. That the age was mentioned as 16, and with a lot of activism that has gone through the years, we managed to submit a proposal which was passed very recently on the 1st of January 2024. In it, there were two main things that they changed. One was the age of a child being 18. So pretty much we are now in most of the main documents, main rules and laws are now 18, as well as one of the other clauses that they amended. They actually repealed section 76.1 within the CYPO, which said that if a child is in a guardianship, anyone who had custody and care of a child could whack them, basically, could corporally punish them. And that has now been repealed. So this is a huge victory that we have gained.
Right. I think UNICEF also basically
welcome
that particular judgment, right?
Yes.
I think recently
Yes.
they put out reports saying
Yes.
that. So what are the rights of a child? What constitutes child abuse?
Right. So according to the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, there are some 50-odd rights. Okay, the main things are similar to all adults. Have a roof over your head, have the right to education, health. Have to be able to live without fear, without any kind of discrimination. Have a voice. Children are allowed a voice, etc., etc., etc. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka and many of the developing countries, we don't recognize our children as rights holders. Right? So the voice is very much muffled, although we now have our children who do speak up, who are very more advanced and know more about the world than we do. So considering a child as a rights holder is non-existent in Sri Lanka. And because of that, there's a lot of abuse that happens, which is normalized. That's how it was. So why should it be any different? So there's broadly categorizing abuse, there's 4. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, and neglect.
Sorry, what is Neglect.
So those are the 4 categories. And of that, if you ask me what is the most common form of abuse all around the world, abuse needs to be seen. I'm pretty sure in my own theory that mental abuse by far is the most common. But then you would need to prove that with records and psychiatric reports, etc.
It should be far more difficult.
More difficult. It's more internalized. So for that reason, the most common form of abuse is physical abuse, not just in Sri Lanka, but globally, affecting more than 1.3 billion children. And in Sri Lanka alone, incidents of cruelty. Cruelty is the legal terminology. The lay people's terminology is physical abuse or corporal punishment, because physical abuse, the most common way is corporal punishment. It has tripled, has increased by threefold over the last 10 years. And child abuse in itself, which includes sexual abuse as well as physical abuse, has now become, get ready for this, has now become one of the top 6 grave crimes in Sri Lanka as per the Sri Lanka police reports of 2023. This has never happened in any other country, whether they have had a war, whether they have had famine, etc. And in the period between July 2020 to July 2022, when we had COVID, guess how many children were actually murdered in our country?
I got
You had no idea.
I didn't even know even one was.
No, I wouldn't be able to even guess.
Wow.
Okay. So there were 17 children who were either physically or sexually abused and murdered. Okay, 17 children within 2 years. No authority bat an eyelid during that time. No officer of the government mentioned anything, but we were headline news around the world. Different scenarios were picked up. Okay, comparing that time to UK, one of the larger countries, had 2 children who were physically abused and murdered. Both those cases by the end of 2022, they had finished the case and the perpetrators have been now imprisoned. In ours, the 17 children.
I'm going to take a guess there. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely
Zero.
nothing for the all 17.
Zero.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. Well, you're close enough. Last month, they managed to finish one of those.
Out of the 17.
Out of the 17. But majority of the others, they haven't even indicted, haven't been filed. So we are in a pitiful state. I am not joking when I use words such as child protection crisis, because it really, truly is. But because we don't consider children as rights holders, and because they're only good as political slogans, they're only as good as saying, Daruanta heta, Daruanta rata. But because the children, I say we as a child, because I'm on their side for this conversation, for this purpose. So because the children don't have a voice, then nobody wants to know.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have a vote, they don't have a
They
voice.
don't have a vote.
Yeah, maybe there would be more attention paid to them if they did.
Yes.
Obviously, they're children. So,
And
I
you know
think,
what?
yes, of course,
Something
please,
small.
please.
Sorry.
No, go
No,
on.
not
Go
after
on.
you. No,
Okay.
after you.
Something that you mentioned, you said it's come to the sixth most important or sixth grave
Top
six
six.
crimes. Is it possible that it has always been like that? Just that now with awareness, people are
No,
more reporting.
it hasn't been, because when we compare the
Okay.
annual reports, so this has started to decline around the 2019-2020 period, and it has steadily declined. We have a theory. We have a theory. There is no proof. But do you remember the last official task that President Sirisena did as he was leaving his job?
He
Yes,
pardoned-
Pardon Shamanta, that guy.
So he pardoned the Royal Park murderer
That's right.
for murdering a 19-year-old.
Yes.
Do you guys recall the first grand official task that the incoming President Gotabaya did?
Yeah, he pardoned Duminda Silva.
Duminda Silva, yeah.
No.
No?
He pardoned somebody else.
Who he pardoned who?
Duminda Silva.
No, way before that.
Can't remember.
as COVID started, he released Sergeant Sunil Ratnayaka,
yes.
who murdered 4 children and 3 adults.
Yes.
Okay, and these people were convicted after lengthy court procedures and convicted by the Supreme Court, and not just convicted, but they were on death row. Okay, what does that tell you? What did that do to us?
Well, basically desensitized people, maybe, and just
Gave them permission.
Yes.
created a permissive kind of a
Yes,
atmosphere.
so what it did was it completely deroped the judiciary, created a state of anarchy,
Yes.
and said, hello, you can abuse, not only abuse, you can now kill a child. We have a system where somebody will come with 1 pen stroke, will get you out. And so hence, we now have people who know that it takes how long for a case in Sri Lanka, not just child abuse, on any kind of criminal case, from start to end?
Years.
5 years? If you're
It's
lucky?
approximately 7 to 10 years. Okay? During that 7 to 10 years, a person is on bail, goes back to doing whatever they do. There's no tracking or anything else. So, in terms of children, you abuse a child, you're out on bail, nothing is going to happen for 7 to 10 years. You get someone that you know, as we do, a big politician or someone that is influential, your case is never heard. Okay, even if you do go to prison, what is the most commonest type of sentencing that they get for child abuse?
Suspended.
Suspended jail term. Okay. And then, just by fluke, if you do get convicted, and how many convictions do we have on average per year for sexual abuse?
Absolutely no idea.
Anyone?
1 or 2, I don't know. Maybe 1 or 2.
1 or 2 per year. And if you do, then somebody will come.
Was that
and
correct? 1 or
yes,
2?
1 or 2. 1 or 2 per year. And there are some years they haven't even had.
And
Astonishing. I mean,
there's
we-
no sex offender register either, right?
No, there's no
Nothing.
sex offenders.
Yeah, I mean, that's astonishing. We always say country with crimes,
Crimes
but no
criminals.
criminals.
Yeah.
We generally say that in terms of the politicians and the scams, but then it applies across the board. So, sorry, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
unlike adults, though, then this is, somebody might turn around and say, so what's the difference? Adults are the same, children are the same. Why are you making such a big fuss about this? What people don't understand is these traumas that happen to children, you carry them on to your adulthood. So you're waiting basically in a burning inferno. The child, the family, waiting, expecting some form of justice for years and years, and then eventually they give up. Do you know how not so long ago when the Attorney General Dapula de Oliveira came into his job, he made a sweeping statement to say, I'm going to finish this many cases. And then he celebrated his victory. How? By clearing this many cases of children.
He dropped them?
Yeah.
Settled.
He just basically
He dropped the
called, his
cases.
office called the furthest, oldest cases. And they said, Anemis, api dem bandala apita lamai innawa, and things like that, And basically they cleared a backlog of thousands of cases without actually hearing them. And that's how he cleared it.
So there's
Okay.
no
So
accountability.
this is not just about not having justice. This is about the burden to the system. Why do I say it's a burden to the system? As the moment a child is abused, the moment a child is hurt, it affects their health. So it's a burden to the health. Okay, you could have an injury, or you could have psychological trauma. So it affects your health. Burden to the education, law enforcement. The child ends up being a non-productive citizen, and then it becomes a burden to the social services. Tell me where that cycle goes in that order in any other crime.
Not as pronounced as child abuse.
So if the government is now looking away, if the people who are responsible for making decisions are thinking, is this going to give me some points, brownie points for the upcoming election? Dare I take this because I'm going to be unpopular? Should I be just pleasing some one sector, maybe in robes or maybe not? Should I be helping some teacher unions or maybe not? And if you decide to cop out, what you're doing is state-sponsored child abuse.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear. It's a very uncomfortable conversation, right? All as parents to listen to some of this, and most of this, like I think we're hearing almost for the first time. I mean, that shows the lack of awareness in general of this topic. I mean, I thought I knew something, right? And I read a bit before this, but
and actually the statistics you were talking about, the number of reported cases, that's only the reported cases.
Yes,
in fact,
what is the percentage that are not?
Yeah.
Indeed, yes.
So I read in that UNICEF same report that increasing reporting, they're welcoming the fact that there's increased reporting.
Yes,
does that mean something is working?
Sure. So the awareness that we are creating, and I can't take this just for our organization, there's a lot of us speaking about it, as well as I think the 1929, the hotline number from the National Child Protection Authority has become very popular. So there are a lot of people who are using it. So yes, in order for crimes to reduce, the crimes need to be reported. People need to be aware. So that is happening. But then what?
Right.
So now we have a situation where where the Auditor General himself has given a report, as he does for every department. And guess how many cases have been concluded via the NCPA for the last 10 years?
The Child Protection Agency.
Yes. The National Child Protection Authority, which is the most powerful agency. So most of the cases are being reported to them. I mean, there's lots being reported to the regional police as well, but we have clear statistics via National Child Protection Authority, which is NCPA. So the Auditor General says that about 89,000 cases were reported for the last 8 to 9 years.
89,000?
8 to 9,000, because it's about 10,000. 10 to 12,000 in some years. And out of that, just under 40,000 have concluded, and less than 50,000 have been referred to the Attorney General.
For prosecution?
Yes.
The others have just been dropped?
We don't know what has happened. They're probably just lamenting. They're just probably waiting, because as we speak right now, there are over 30,000 cases backlogged on child abuse at the Attorney General's Department, going as long as 10 years.
Right. So actually that brings up, you probably answered part of this, brings up to the sort of the point about our preparedness to handle child abuse cases, from the point of reporting to those agencies, to law enforcement, investigation, and also like caring for that child. Is there proper care? Do you have faith in the system, the current mechanism that's in place? And what is that?
Do I have faith? The system. No. I'll tell you why. Sri Lanka doesn't have a national policy on child protection. Sri Lanka doesn't have a national policy on many things. Okay? But if you want to progress, and if you want to develop your systems, the first thing you need to think about is the future. Who holds the future? You need to prepare a policy to protect them first. In the absence of a national child protection policy, we are then compelled to look outwards and think, okay, so the government is not doing anything. What is the state responsible for? That includes you, and I. So the state party, what have we agreed to in that case? So there are treaty bodies, particularly to the UNCRC. Then we have the UN Human Rights Council, Mission, whatever, committees, and different other treaty bodies. So in terms of children, the UNCRC is a primary. We signed, we ratified. There's a difference between signing and ratified. For people who may be watching it, signing is basically to say, yeah, this is a lovely piece of paper, we agree, put your hands up. Ratify means, yeah, we agree to make that as part of our law. Okay? So we ratified it in 1991. And then, you know, signing up to these things is not something that you can just suddenly decide, oh, well, we're not going to bother with it, as President Gotabaya Rajapaksa decided to do, saying we're not going to engage in this, right? You can't. You have to. You have to follow, no matter who is governing your country. You have to follow that through every 3 to 4 years. There are many reasons why we sign up to treaty bodies. One is that we need to be at par. We want to be at par with the rest of the world to say that we are of equality. We have standards. Okay, we're going to be the same as you. Our children are going to have the same rights as you. Our children will have those rights, not just in Sri Lanka, but wherever they go to any other country, they will be protected. So we're going to sign up for that. Next is that you get the expertise and the knowledge and the support from them. 3, you get truckloads of funding. And lastly, is that you are setting an example. You are setting the stage in a region to say, yes, we will do this. So as such, Sri Lanka is the only South Asian pathfinding country, blue slide please, that signed up to the Sustainable Developmental Goals for 2030, particularly goal number 16.2 on ending violence against children. So we are the only flag-flying country in South Asia. That we did in 2017. Guess what happened to the National Plan to End Violence Against Children by 2018? Collapsed. Why did it collapse? Because the government at the time, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Justice, they didn't work together. Right? So that has collapsed.
Yes, it was 2017.
Okay. So, and then what happened? So they put their hand up and said, we are going to be the pathfinding nation for ending violence against children. And in 2018, we had our assessment. So I said, you have an obligation. This is not something that you can change like musical chairs just because some president doesn't like it. 2018, we were assessed Sri Lanka for the last time under the UNCRC, and we're coming up for the assessment very soon. At that time, there were 5 things that they flagged up as being critical and urgent. And I repeat those words as critical and urgent. And Sri Lanka, the state party agreed. Number 1 was ending violence against children, including corporal punishment. Number 2 was on sexual abuse. Number 3 was child labor. Number 4 was the welfare of the children who were displaced by war. 9 years after the war ended, we needed to look after them. And number 5 was the update on juvenile justice reforms. Okay. So going with that, if I may jump next to the next slide. So with ending violence against children, that's one of the things that we have achieved was the CYPO amendments that I talked about. Remember the section 76(1) on corporal punishment that they repealed? Yeah. And another victory that we gained was in 2022, the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka gave a historic, magnificent verdict on a case of corporal punishment for a student. And in that, they gave the verdict taking into account the definition of corporal punishment via the UNCRC, taking into account the Ministry of Education circulars that have banned corporal punishment, taking into account the views of the public, the archaic ideas, and they actually quoted the very, very popular Sinhala saying, "Handi noga hadana hoddai, noga hadana daruai, padak naha." I don't know if people are familiar with this.
I'm not. Explain it a little bit,
so
please.
It says, it's an old proverb. It says, "Handi noga hadana hoddai, noga hadana daruai, padak naha."
So basically,
means
it's encouraging.
basically
Slap
Right.
Okay.
But the irony of that, so the verdict actually says, now these things are pretty archaic, we need to go beyond this. And then finally, they also talked about these penal codes, which I will come in a minute. And they said, these have to be repealed and amended because the law is all over the place. So once we ratified it in 1991, the UNCRC, during Madam C.B. case time, there was one law that was amended, 308 Penal Code, and it criminalized cruelty against children, both physical and mental abuse. Since then, nothing else has happened. No other president has ever done anything substantial. Now comes the confusion, the discrepancy, and the ineffective implementation of the law. Why? Because there's this. Can anyone, no, just leave it. Can anyone, and this is a challenge for anyone who's watching, if you're on live, could you please tell me which group of people in Sri Lanka can be punished or assaulted legally?
Children.
Okay, so we have a law that says, that has banned it now. We have one law, or we have two other laws which legitimizes assault against children. One, which is still in the penal code. And this was written when? In 18...
Doesn't the new law supersede the...
Yes, it does, but it is not a clean law. Because if you go to the police station, okay, this happened with my own child, so I have very good experience with this. You go to the police station, the first question they ask is, "Lamage vayasa kiyada?" "12ට අඩුයි sir." Then patch up. Because there's a law in our country, section 82, that says that if a child is less than 12 years of age and you punish them in good faith, it is not a crime.
In good faith.
In good faith.
That's subjective.
That's leaving it to like broad interpretation, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Okay. And then we come to the next law. This is the bane. This is like the jackpot law that the educators love. Next slide, please. And here it actually says 341, which is under assault. There's sets of examples from A onwards. So I example, so that's 341I actually says that if a schoolmaster flogs a student and does it for the benefit of the child, it is not a crime. Flog. When was the last time you actually heard that word?
2000 years ago, maybe,
Yeah,
when
Christ
Christ was
was
crucified.
Yes. So, what's the new word for flog?
Gosh.
Beat.
Go on, Nick.
Trash.
Go on.
Cane.
Go on.
It.
Go on.
Get
The most sophisticated word for flog is assault.
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 So basically, you can assault a child in school.
When is this law?
When
This
was the
has been-
penal codes? Okay, so these laws were established in 1883. And which year are we in now?
Gosh, 2024.
Sorry, was anybody aware of this particular?
No.
I wasn't.
No, right. But this is what must be cited by
The police.
anybody who is brought
Yes.
before the law must be citing this.
Yes. So when you take a case, even though the law 308A supersedes what we know as law, and people who are dealing with these things and lawyers and everyone knows it, still, nevertheless, whenever we do a training program, I kid you not, we do 2 days of training, give them ways and means and give them the tricks of the trade on positive discipline, etc., etc., etc. At the end of the day, someone comes up and says, "ඉතින් මිස් නීතියෙන් ගහන්න පුළුවන් නම් මොකටද මෙච්චර මේ වෙනස් වෙන්න ඕනේ? මොනවටද මේවා ඉගෙන ගන්න? Why should we? If the law is allowing us to do this." Which is why the No Guti campaign is focusing on law reforms going in hand with the number 1 and the number 5 obligation of Sri Lanka to the UNCRC, which the state party agreed to. We are very, very adamant that these laws need to be repealed. And the No Guti campaign started 2 years ago as a form of raising awareness on violence against children. It was massively successful. There was almost like a Me Too movement that came out of it. And we know now there are a lot of people who are saying, no, this has to stop. But there are still a small group of people who are insisting, and sadly it is the educationists themselves who are insisting that these laws should not be changed. Even the teacher unions now are on board with us, and the teacher unions who have been very adamant and marching and requesting certain convictions be returned, etc. They're all on our side now, but we are very sad to tell you this, that in the Ministry of Education, I'm revealing this because I have no other way of getting this passed. I have to reveal this, and this comes with very good information because it happened at a stakeholder meeting that we were involved in on law reforms on ending corporal punishment. There are officers from the Ministry of Education, there are education service providers, they're not in the classrooms, they're bureaucrats. They were in this committee, and right at the end, the final day, they just said, no, we want the law. If we can't beat children, we will be resigning. We will not be involved in disciplinary action. And these are the people who actually introduced the circular number 12/2016, which prohibits corporal punishment in classrooms. So I don't know what their role is, what their agenda is, but the only reason that these laws are not being amended, now after years of work with different stakeholders, the cabinet proposal for penal code reforms have been submitted to the Minister of Justice on the 15th of September 2023. It's lying on his table. He's not submitting it to cabinet. He has all the power. And I'd like to make an appeal, if I may.
Yes, of course, yeah.
To Minister Wijayadasa Rajapaksa. If you have any hope of becoming the president of this country, don't keep repeating the same rhetorics that everyone else has done. Be bold and take a stance, a strong stance, to protect the children. Make your pen work before the parliament has been dissolved, so you can be remembered as the last person who did something for our children. We don't want to be living in 1883. We want to be living in the 21st century, where our children deserve better, for a future that is free of violence.
That is where the bottleneck is. It's
It
actually,
is.
right now, all of it's just hinged on this one person's
it's
decision.
It's him. If he does it, we're through. He's just not submitting it.
So
He's busy,
So
he's
there's
busy,
a
isn't
there's
he?
a change.
Recently, he was about to announce his major political decision.
Yeah, so today he announced that people are asking him to run for the presidency and so on.
obviously he's occupied with those
Focus
things.
is-
No, he's probably, which is why I said at the very beginning that they're probably thinking that is this going to get me brownie points, or is this going to make me unpopular, or etc. etc. But hey, there is a call.
Yeah.
In UK, the elections are coming, and do you know what the main point of call, one of the rallying calls for the politicians to do before Parliament is dissolved in England is ban corporal punishment.
So basically what we need is a good faith effort, not to use this as some political football.
Yes,
You
indeed.
know, a good faith effort to actually put an end to a very cruel sort of practice that has
It
been
is.
going on for far too long.
And there is a judgment that has been given via the Supreme Court. So if the Honourable Minister is deliberately not following the Supreme Court directives as well, I don't know, is somebody being
coerced.
Yes, it is.
Possibly.
Yes.
So actually, you started a change.org petition, I believe, right?
Yes, we have.
To urge the minister to
So we want people to support us, please. We
Right.
want that. We're trying to keep it very simple because 30th of April is the International Day to End Corporal Punishment. This is the only day that is recognized by the UN for a particular type of child abuse. Why? Because I said this is the most common form of child abuse. So in Sri Lanka, we're trying to get the penal codes amended. So we have started a petition for the public to support us, particularly on this. It's addressed to the Minister of Justice and the President, who is the Minister of Women's and Children's Affairs.
Right. I think that's a key
Important,
point
yeah.
to raise there,
Yes.
actually. So we'll share the petition on our page. So anybody who wants to support that can go to that link and please sign up.
You need to
because we
mention how, this parliament, there are 134 people. So they can easily get any law passed.
134? 225, you mean?
No. I mean 134 on
134 majority.
majority.
yes.
So they can. I mean,
Yes.
we saw how they passed so many laws
Yes.
to safeguard themselves.
Yes.
The ATA,
Yeah, online safety.
online safety.
So many
So
things.
all those laws, they have no problem rushing
Yeah.
through. Sometimes not even giving to the parliament, for them to go through. But these laws, which
To be honest, I
Actually-
can't see how submitting the cabinet paper, passing a law to protect children can ever be a black mark against anyone.
No, it's
I can't
low-hanging fruit,
imagine
right?
why it
It's-
should be
Yeah.
a,
no,
a
I'll tell you.
political
I'll tell you.
football.
I'll tell you.
Well,
No,
politically it's
no,
very-
it's changing the. They don't want to be the one who made the change because they're worried that it might
But
backfire
why?
on them.
How will
Is it
this
that?
backfire?
But how? Because
How?
what I'm trying to reassure the Honourable Minister is that the teacher unions are now on board. Just because there's a handful of bureaucrats in the Ministry of Education who may have asked you not to pass this is not a good enough reason, because you've got experts in that committee who have given you that submission. We've put our heart and soul to it and worked for it. And so, majority has to count.
Right. I mean, this is the system change we need, right?
Exactly.
It needs, if we don't do something for our kids, what are we doing all this for? So, apart from the legal sort of frameworks that need to change, apart from these laws that are coming in, what else can we do as citizens? What is our responsibility in all of this?
Okay. So there's a lot that's going wrong in Sri Lanka at the moment. Okay, even though we have those 5 priorities as urgent and critical, which is, again, to refresh everyone's minds, is ending violence against children, including corporal punishment, sexual abuse, child labor, welfare of the children who were displaced by war, and the law reforms, juvenile justice reforms. Because we've had COVID, because we've now had a crisis, economic crisis, there are other things that have overcome. Things like malnutrition, things like the education, etc. So what we can do is very limited, because we are also, as a nation, suffering and trying to come out of it. So we have our own worries and our own issues as well. Just trying to keep a meal on the table has become such a difficult task these days. So I don't want to put too much burden on the people. I want to keep it realistic. What can you do? As simple as keep your eyes and ears open. If you see a child is being hurt, whether physical or sexual, it's very common. If it happens in a school, there are teachers who will see it happening. It's not done in a hidden way. Please go stop it from happening. If you see your neighbor hurting your child, stop it. Report it. Okay? If you see that a child is being abused online, there is so much online abuse that is happening, stop it. Don't share it. Speak up on behalf of those children. Because the moment you turn a blind eye, a deaf ear, pretending that you haven't seen or heard, you become an accessory to child abuse. So just remember that, not to contribute. Yes. What else can you do? Empower your child. Make them aware of the simple things of body protection. Because there is, the statistics are so grim. I just don't want to keep telling you this, but a child is being sexually molested every 2 hours in our country, in this paradise island. So you might not think it's going to happen to your child. You might not even know that it has happened to your child. They're not safe. Most of the abuse happens within homes. 90% of abuse, whether it's physical or sexual, happens within the homes from the people whom they love and trust. So be aware, make your children aware, empower them to recognize body safety. Sexuality education is make it a compulsory subject. Don't object. It is coming up very soon. We have worked very hard towards it. So sexuality education is now going to come into mainstream education very soon. Please do not object. This is the way forward to reduce. Laws, if a law is being introduced, there is only one reason. What is the reason of a law being introduced in a country?
Address some societal issue
Yes.
in society.
But the purpose is to prevent a crime happening. It is not focused on perpetrator. It is to prevent. So the laws that we are introducing or we are requesting for the government to pass are laws to protect a child, to prevent child abuse. It is not focused on the perpetrator. We don't want to say, break the law and then we will do something about it. It's not like how we do the traffic laws in this country. You speed, then we catch you. But in other countries, there are big signs that says speed limit is 30, red lights and green lights encouraging you to reduce your speed. They don't want to catch you after you've broken the law.
So prevention rather than
prevention.
cure.
Yes, even actually they warn you that the speed cameras
It's happening. But ours, we hide behind a bush and we hold the camera, right?
Yeah.
That's the change that we need to encourage.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that applies to law enforcement across the board. Across the board.
Absolutely. So, but this misconception of the educators thinking that a law is being brought to penalize them, to imprison them, is completely misguided. It is not true. That's not what we want to do. A law applies to everyone across the board, parents, teachers, private and government service. Okay. What else can people do? Talk about it. Raise awareness. Issues. The moment you stay silent, that'll be the death of you. So it might, like I say, you might not think it will ever happen, but it will. And when it does happen, it's too late. And be a friend to your child. We are so distant. We're so disconnected with our children. And the one thing you can do is to build your relationships with your children. Be close to your children so that they can come to you at any time without fear or embarrassment, without thinking that your parents are going to skin you, that they would come and talk to you. So keep those doors wide open to have that communication and the link going with your children.
Are you working directly with children to make sure that they understand sort of
Yes.
their rights
So-
and things like that?
Absolutely. So we have started a campaign with 39 schools in Hikkaduwa called the Happy and Safe Education Secure Schools Program. And with that, we work with teachers on training, etc. We work with parents and students and other stakeholders in the community. So the students have a voice. I mean, it's a stage process. So the students have a voice. With that, we do programs on global citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen? A lot of people do leadership. Okay, and I think that those leadership trainings are good, please don't get me wrong, but somebody actually used this word, not me, that these leadership programs are being prostituted because you're encouraging everyone to be, you've got to be the leader, you've got to have the power, and, you've got to be strong, you can't be, soft, etc., etc. But those are the characteristics that has got us to where we are now. Everyone doesn't have to be a leader. You just have to be a Saravat Minisek. You just have to be a holistic individual So we are trying to encourage students of that. We are addressing sexuality education and dependency, and we're also dealing with antisocial behavior. So yes, we're doing a lot. We're trying to do a lot, and there's only so much that a small organization can do. Most of these things ought to be done by the necessary government agencies, particularly National Child Protection Authority. But sadly, even as we try to do things like this, which are wonderful, and it's very forward thinking, these are the things that other countries do, there's always somebody. So the Past Pupils Association are now banging about it, saying, if you gahanna nathu ape lamai tawat narak wenawa. So you always have that. You always will have a small cohort of people who will object, and their voice is the loudest. But don't let it happen.
What is the view of the Child Protection Authority? Are they on board with this?
Oh, yes. In
They are.
terms of, yes, so they are the ones who appointed the special committee
Okay.
on legal reforms, and they are the ones who spearheaded the formation of the proposed bill.
In fact, there's a couple of questions
Sorry,
that we
sorry.
brought in about the
Alright.
Child Protection Agency. So are there sort of regulations around sort of setting up of orphanages? Where are the vulnerabilities? Now, for example, I know this could be a controversial area, but then there are certain sacred cows that we are not supposed to touch, but that will directly come into conflict with some of the things that you're working on, like ordaining children, for example.
Yes.
So
Well-
things like that. How do you get past those cultural barriers?
Okay. With difficulty. I said on Facebook today when I shared your post, there are no subjects that are taboo and there is nothing off limits. So let's be honest. A child is most vulnerable within the clergy. Why? This is state-sponsored child abuse because the state does not take responsibility to ensure that the person who takes custody of this child doesn't have a criminal record or has any kind of training, has the wealth, is able to provide for the child, to give them an education. They don't go and check on this child. Okay? Can you tell me if you wake up tomorrow morning and suddenly decide, oh, I kind of fancy having a little baby, can you just go and get a baby?
No, you can't.
No. You get up tomorrow morning and you decide, and this is such a nuisance and I don't have the money to look after my child anymore. I want to give this child away. Can you give your child away tomorrow? So how can one person get and one person give away a child in Sri Lanka without the government taking any responsibility?
Good tempo.
Sadhu sadhu, and you can give away the child.
Oh,
That's all you have to do. Sadhu.
සාධකාරයකින් දරුවාගේ භාරකාරත්වය පැවරිය හැකි එකම ක්‍රමය මහාන කිරීමයි. So what we're saying is not to say don't ordain. Of course, we have written to the Minister for Buddha Sasana and Religious Affairs, as well as the President, who is the Minister of Children's Affairs, but President has overall powers. We have given them a proposal to say at least have an age, maybe 16, which is a good age, because 16 is an age where you can have sex, where you can make decisions for yourself, you can leave school, education, etc., etc. So 16 is a good age in our opinion. Alternatively, if that is not possible, even if they do, they must have a system where they have in the state, where in the adoption services, similar, so that the ultimate guardianship that the state has for children is practiced in these places as well. Another place where our children are vulnerable and at risk, funnily enough, is where?
the orphanages?
Orphanages.
The orphanages.
Under the probation department itself. It's a cesspit of abuse.
Yes.
There, Do you know this very famous, you probably don't know, so let me guide you again on this. Lord Buddha once said to a disciple, Kisa Gautami, who had lost her entire family in like 24 hours, parents, her husband, her children, everyone. So she was in such distraught, went to Lord Buddha and he said, you go and find me abba, mustard seed, from a house that hasn't had a death. And that's how he managed to solace. She couldn't find.
She couldn't find. Okay.
If you can bring me gummeries, pepper, from a kitchen of an orphanage where there hasn't been abuse, I will take my hat off to you.
After here, right?
Yes.
So this is why I keep repeating the words state-sponsored child abuse. None of these people have been trained. They don't have any criminal records checked. In fact, what happens both in education as well as in probation department is that if you abuse a child and if there is a case filed against you, you are then, even if there is a criminal case, so you get bail, you then get transferred to another school or you get transferred to another probation department. Right? So they recycle around. And this is very common happening in Sri Lanka.
In fact, you're seeding abuse.
Yes, you are. So we are actually defending or acting on behalf of the biggest child abuse case that has happened under one roof in a state probation department care home of 10 boys who were sexually gravely abused as well as physically abused. This happened during the COVID time. It all came out in 2022. And we found that the carer who abused these kids already had an open case having physically abused children who were disabled in another care home. So what they did in the south under the probation department just moved him from there to here where he did something even worse. So this is what happens all the time within our system. So this has to stop. We've given proposal after proposal to different variety of parliamentary committees, variety of other committees, to every minister from every regime, spanning more than 10 years of my lifetime, certainly. But it's happening. Change is happening. I'm telling you that change is happening very slowly. Eyes are opening wider as we speak, because there was a time that we were also very diplomatic. And thanks to Aragalaya, we have also become more vociferous. And we have also decided, sod it. Let's just be frank, right? And that, I believe, naming, shaming is the only way forward in a country such as this, because the more diplomatic or nicey you try to be, all you're doing is brushing it under the carpet. But so things are happening, and I must, at the same time, actually say good things about the NTPA, which are trying very hard under a lot of constraints. Just today I heard that they're working at 50% capacity. So it's very difficult. They have a lot to do. But they are doing.
And then 50% understaffed.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, which means they need more funds allocated to them.
Yes. So the budget allocation for National Child Protection Authority is abysmal. Just guess how much they were allocated for research this year. Just guess.
5 million?
Holy shites.
Okay. All right.
Is that a lot?
Okay, I'm going to guess.
Is that a lot?
I'm going to take a guess. Okay,
I don't think they even got the whole budget of 5 million.
Okay, I'm going to take a guess. So
I'm talking about research.
Okay, 2023, we always talk about these figures, since they allocated 539 billion for defense. I will just be generous and say 1% of that is 5.39 billion rupees.
For research.
Yeah. No, towards child protection.
Child protection. Well, I forgot the exact amounts. It is pittance. Let's put it that way.
1% of defense.
No.
Since we are. such a Jata Jati Agama.
No,
and
I don't
that's
think
what we
so.
were- no?
No, I don't think so. But I am very concerned that to do research, because we wanted to do research, because Sri Lanka lacks research in a lot of things, including child protection. We have a grand total of 200,000 rupees.
Oh my
Yay!
For research?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of sad.
You need to tell this to the
It's
people,
so- it's-
people who
it's
are
so complicated.
justifying the air ticket cost of 5.6 million rupees of our president to go to visit the Queen's funeral
Yeah.
in England. People who are justifying that.
I mean,
I hope they're
spend-
listening.
They spend more than 200,000 rupees just giving tea
Well-
in the president's house for one day, maybe in the president's office.
Yeah, per
The
day.
president appealed in excellent appeal. I've got no problems with that, to support the children in Palestine.
Yes,
Um,
he did.
Truckloads of money came from the rich. The president, the executive president, now for the second time only ever in our country, is a cabinet minister for women and children's affairs. Make an appeal, Mr. President. We need more funding to look after your citizens, the young citizens for whom you went and gave New Year presents. I think we need to stop. So this appeal to you, Mr. President, is to give us more funding and get your cabinet minister to table that proposal to ban corporal punishment.
Well, I think we need to amplify that message, right? I think, and maybe get some clips out of this and then get it out there.
not-
But just quickly, also we see, UNICEF itself released some reports about child malnutrition and things like that. I mean, as the ultimate guardian for children, isn't that constitute some form of abuse, that kids are not getting enough nutrition in this country?
It certainly is, which on one end, yes, where we went through an economic crisis, so we're trying to get through it. But on the other end, we also have the systematic corruption that happens in our country. So even the rice that was supposedly for the children ended up in someone else's pocket.
Yeah.
Right? That became a huge contention, bone of contention. So these things should not happen. When there are children who are starving, then someone else pockets it.
Right. And also children being used as props.
Children being used as props is happening.
To advance political sort
Yes,
of
to take-
causes, but
To get political mileage. It's happening quite a lot with starting from the head of state to other politicians as well, in all parties, including the novice politicians as well as the more experienced ones, who are using children child monks in their political campaigns lately, and we have been writing about it against that. So using children is not uncommon even in the developed countries, but they do so with a very positive message, not like giving something and taking a photo. They would possibly have made some legislative changes that would benefit the children and then take some photos.
Yeah.
They would be making some kind of, landmark decisions about benefiting children, as opposed to giving a meal that you have got a donation of. It might have been great if this school has produced a harvest and then,
in fact, that was the point we were making, that this is just tokenism.
Exactly.
It doesn't
And
really address any root causes.
absolutely. And this is, just this morning I was trying to explain to someone to say that, you have the samurdhi, which is called by some other name, but now, you're giving this aswasima to individuals, but to be honest, the whole country is on an aswasima because we're just getting someone to donate to us to get us off a difficult time without actually producing anything.
Credit lines and various things that
so
we're
we're
using.
all in aswasima.
Recently we saw this Lancet report about malnutrition. Immediately the government rejected it. How does that make you feel when, international agencies, we have signed up to various conventions,
Sure.
and yet when one of these agencies comes out something, immediately it's rejected, and then a different narrative is put forward.
Sure. So I actually don't know where the government is getting their statistics from in order to reject it. So if they do reject this, then they ought to say, well, actually you're wrong because here are the correct statistics.
Yeah, but we
Right.
never get that. We
But
just get a
we
rejection.
we don't
I mean,
get that.
they rejected the
So-
UNICEF report too, right?
Exactly. So you can see that this is just political. They're just trying to protect their image, maybe.
Can I point out an irony? So on the one hand, photo opportunity using World Food Program money to give a meal to a child. At the same time,
Same,
the UNICEF
yes.
report by the same agencies, right?
Sure.
Same organization body gets rejected, right? I mean, that is the kind of the Biden or the nature of politics.
Sure.
Are we supposed to accept it?
It's
as the nature
just
of
plain
politics?
stupidity, in other words. But they're just exposing themselves unnecessarily by the silly things that they keep doing.
But I think people observing them need to be more objective, right?
Sure.
And then be able to kind of discern what exactly is going on. And that's part of our mission to keep. But I think, we have always said we want to be a voice. And I think we need to be a voice for children. We've been a voice for like political change. But listening to you, Tosh, it's been very sobering, quite frankly. I mean, it's...
Just a total different viewpoint. Since I think you said this is the second time that the president holds a portfolio of women and children.
Yes.
And normally it's just finance and defense. So since he holds his portfolio, and since an election is coming up, presidential election, and since the polls are showing that certainly he will not win, what do you think? Don't you think you have a better chance of getting him to? Okay.
In fact, I think I know what you're getting at.
I'm a person. Let's say, just imagine I am the president. I know I will not win, right? Why not? These are good laws. These are good suggestions. Okay, who cares if nobody? It's not going to change my vote. I'll pass these laws.
But can I tell you something? When you're surrounded by people who only tell you that you're going to win, you know what I mean?
No, I was going to. Yeah.
He probably genuinely thinks that
He's
he has
gonna
an
win,
opportunity to
yeah.
win. I mean, I think but
No, maybe
But to
maybe
be
you could
honest-
use that.
Yes. So, but
Say, why
my
don't
view
you
is-
pass this before you?
that's
This
exactly
is exactly
what
what we're
Tish is
doing with the petition.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we're doing with the petition. But to be honest, my view is that child protection needs to be at the heart of national security agenda.
Could we not
Okay.
Yes.
appeal to the political parties to make this a center point in any manifesto and
Yes,
say like,
we
listen,
should,
we need this?
because we tried to do that in 2022 with another petition, and we went and met all the political leaders, asking them to put child protection in the national security agenda. All of them signed up to it, including the Pohottua leadership. But when it actually comes to biting it, doing something, they don't. I mean, Parliament is a wonderful place. If anyone tells me that you need to be in power to do something, you are so misguided. If you have a well-organized opposition, if you have a shadow cabinet in the opposition, you can do so much for our country. You are there representing us. You're not there representing your constituency. You need to leave politics outside. You need to stop waving your banners inside. You do that on a political platform. You leave your politics aside. You go in there and work together. And you in the opposition can hold the cabinet ministers to accountability. Don't ask a question and sit down, follow it through. That is something that you guys don't do. In these committees, we get called. Whenever a new minister comes, we get called. But this minister doesn't know what happened at the last meeting. So even in court, the same is being repeated. The same is being repeated. We go and give our evidence all the time. But it's the same rubbish that keeps circulating. So if you're the opposition, there are plenty of you who are experienced in the opposition. You've seen your fathers, you've seen your mothers, you've seen your husbands do politics. You are privileged to be in that position because of your family connections. Don't use our tax money to have a lovely life, which is what you guys are doing. Work for it. Make our vote count, because you in the opposition, even if the government isn't doing it right, you can. And I don't see the opposition working together. I don't see the opposition doing what they're supposed to do.
That's one of our frustrations too. In fact, for certain votes, we didn't even see people turning up.
Yes.
Critical votes that affected all of us.
And you need to have a shadow cabinet. Everybody is jumping up and down like clowns talking about everything else. Nobody actually knows their subject matter apart from one or two people who talk only about that subject. There is no continuation whatsoever of a question that is being asked. There is no follow through. Okay. This is a joke. All of you are taking it as a joke. And at the end of the day, it is our children who suffer. We have a very short lifespan left to go. By you, if you want to give our children a better country, please think of our children as being unscathed and unscarred, fit to receive that country.
Fit for life and purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to kind of wind things up. We've gone over an hour.
Okay.
Tush, you've been very generous with your time. Plus, this has been a really sobering but eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much for...
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. And for me to be able to be as bold as I am, because every time I go to an interview, I've been told, "Araka kiyanna ba, meka kiyanna ba." So
no, but we agree that
yes,
there's no such thing here.
So thank you so much for giving that opportunity.
Yeah, no, we've created a civic space where, people can come and voice their thoughts and opinions. Before
So
we
sign
wind
the
up,
petition, everyone.
Yeah, sign the petition. So generally we end with a quote that Lisha chooses each week that is suitable. So there are 2 quotes this week. So let's start with that, an obvious one, no, Lisha?
First one is, children are the world's most valuable resource and its best hope for the future. That is from John F. Kennedy. And the second one is actually from UNICEF. Every single child, no matter who or where they are, must be protected.
Yeah, thank you, Lisha. As we wind up, Tush, is there a final message you'd like to leave? I know you spoke directly to the MPs at large, but anything that you want to add that in conclusion?
Think of your signature for the petition as your vote. Start practicing your vote. Make it count for a change that you and your children deserve. Sign the petition, get the laws reformed, and protect your child to deliver a future that is free of violence.
Beautifully said. I think with that, let's wind up. If there is sort of one FB Live that everybody should watch, I think it's this one. It's such a critical subject, and it's not in the public consciousness, right? Like you said, I think children are seen as property of the parents or whatever, and they really don't have a voice, right? I mean, they are children and animals. Right? There's an animal protection welfare bill also sitting there that other activists are fighting for. We are truly grateful for you and the work that you're doing and your organization and people like you fighting on behalf of kids. I think we can adopt some of these things. We have a set of things that we're fighting for. Do we have anything on children?
No, nothing.
Nothing, right?
We do include.
On education and malnutrition.
We've always fought for accountability and justice for children who've been harmed.
And also
like the children who
malnutrition.
died as a result of the Easter bombings. I mean,
But nothing
very
specific.
deliberate decisions that cost. And we've always said, like, without accountability, there's no incentive to change. And there's no accountability in this space either. So, there's like increased impunity with the actions of like the most powerful people, but leading to sort of really sort of shocking consequences for all of us. So Tush, thank you again.
Thank
you guys for the team who've been here. Thank you Anu and CK, Chiranta as always for covering us. So that's a wrap from day 273, right? Today at GGY. We'll be back on Sunday at the street corner for our regular protest. And next week, we're happy to say that we have Nishan Dimel joining us. I think look forward to a robust discussion on economics and on the economy and good governance and things like that. He's introduced certain things which has now been picked up. We see. So let's let him come and explain all of that to us. Go ahead.
Something that's bugging me. Please, just one thing I want to,
Yeah.
since we are on this governance and all that. I mean, let's leave aside the government, because we spoke about them and their capabilities and what they're not doing. Let's leave aside the Porto and the UNP, which constitute this government. We have two parties, SJB and NPP, that are hoping to come into power. Are you aware of if they have in their manifestos, in their plan of work, if they have anything for children?
Okay. I must admit that the opposition leader Sajid Premadasa has been very supportive, and he has spoken about this matter in Parliament, and he has taken the children, the voices of the children were heard in Parliament with the last petition that we gave them. And he is the one who has been encouraging us to attend the parliamentary oversight committees, etc. But I feel he can do more. In the last presidential election, AKD had a policy on corporal punishment. He was the only presidential candidate at the last presidential election that spoke of corporal punishment. But I believe that he can do more too, because he has since not mentioned anything. So I am appealing to both of them to take this matter.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Sorry,
Chris?
sorry.
Now it's all clear?
All done.
You're good?
Yes. Very sorry.
All right, so then we'll wrap it up. So that's a wrap from day 273. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. Good night.